Hello everybody, it's George from ShopTo and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be comparing the Switch Lite to the original Switch. We're just going to be looking at like actual form factor and then looking at the design changes and stuff like that. No like actual software stuff. We might get into software towards the end if I've got a bit more time. But yeah, we're just going to look at the physical kind of differences this time around. So let's just get straight into it. Let's go straight in with the size comparison. And so, as you can obviously see, as you can see me in the reflection, hello, it's a lot smaller. I mean, we knew this. We knew it was going to be smaller. People did kind of say that the original Switch isn't that pocketable, which is true, especially with the Joy-Cons attached. It's not going to fit in your pocket. This one still kind of isn't going to fit in your pocket, especially because you can't detach those Joy-Cons. But yeah, it's definitely a lot smaller. The screen is definitely small. Let me turn this one on so you can kind of see how big the screen actually is. But yeah, it's quite easy to see the screen on the Switch Lite because it's against a blue background as opposed to against a black one. I will have the exact measurements on the screen for you now, but the Switch Lite is definitely substantially smaller. And I'm not going to lie, it feels awkward to use the big Switch, or the standard Switch for me, to use this thumbstick. It does have my thumb bend, as you can see, at a kind of a weird angle. I'm used to like having it like this for PlayStation or like that for Xbox or whatever, but having it down here has always felt a little bit weird. It doesn't hurt my hand like that much, but I'm not going to lie, it's going to take some used to on this one because it is even lower down. And especially if you're trying to hold it like this, you've got no hope of using the thumbstick. So you're going to kind of have to adjust your fingers underneath, maybe prop it up a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely smaller, and the whole like layout, as you can see, compared to the Joy-Con there, if you look at where the base of the Joy-Con is, it's quite a lot lower on that side. Having said this, it does still feel good in the hand, and as I mentioned in the unboxing, if you've just watched that, the buttons are quite nice, which I'll mention later on, and we'll do an accurate comparison. But yeah, size-wise, you can, if we stand them both in front of each other, you can actually see that there is quite a bit of difference, and especially when you consider that you can take these off and play with it in kickstand mode. Oh, watch out, my Pro Controller's falling down in my lovely background, which I mentioned in the unboxing. Sorry, it's not that great. Yeah, this is what you're actually looking for the system. This is the entire Switch system here for the original one, and compared to this, even that is arguably, I'm not sure how it works out. It might just be a bit smaller in terms of total surface area, but it's still quite big. One other thing to note even, is thickness. Now, it feels thinner, the Switch Lite, but I'm not sure if it actually is. I will have as I said, the exact measurements, and looking at it from this angle, it does look quite similar in terms of depth. I'm not, as I said, I'm not as of right now sure if it is thinner, but it definitely feels thinner. I'm not sure why that is. Let me just stick the Joy-Con on the side and take a look at it like that. I don't know if it is. I think it might be thinner. It's hard to tell, but I think it might be marginally thinner, because when I'm holding the original Switch, I think maybe because it's wider, it sort of doesn't feel thinner. It's weird to describe, but it definitely feels a lot thinner and more portable than the original Switch. But obviously, you're missing out on some of the features because of that, mainly the docking feature. Looking at the actual systems side by side and going all the way around, they're pretty similar. You've got on the bottom here, on the original Switch, you've got the ports for the dock and the stuff for that. You've got the kickstand as well, which you don't get on the Switch Lite, which is, I don't know, I feel like that's a little bit weird, considering you can obviously use the Pro Controller to play with that. But yeah, I feel like a kickstand would have been nice, although the one on the OG Switch is by far and away the worst kickstand I've ever used, but it's still nice to have it, if you know what I mean. So yeah, literally the only differences on the bottom are the speakers come out the bottom of the Switch Lite as opposed to on the bottom of the screen on the original Switch. You've got the SD card slot is very visible on the Switch Lite, whereas on the Nintendo Switch, obviously, it's underneath the kickstand, which we can just take off like that. As you can see, the SD card is just here. So they're in kind of a similar place, really. But ultimately, the design, because there's no kickstand to hide it underneath, it had to change for the Switch Lite. I don't think it looks bad being there. I mean, it's more accessible. I mean, if you're somebody who's new to the Switch, you might not even know that there is an SD card slot under there. So yeah, the bottoms are quite similar. Obviously, it's a lot thinner. It does look a bit more rounded. It feels a little bit more refined. Like it's almost like they've used a smoothing tool for the design to really smooth out some of the rough edges. But yeah, it feels nice in the hand, as I said, and it feels, you know, arguably in handheld mode a little bit nicer than the original Switch. I don't want to jump to conclusions yet because I am, as I said in my unboxing, if you didn't see it, I am someone who plays predominantly with the Pro controller, so I can't really be the judge of how good it is in handheld just yet until I've, you know, played them a bit more. From the side then, it's obviously a lot shorter than the original Switch. I can't put them back to back because of the Joy-Cons and stuff. But yeah, it's a lot shorter. I'd probably say it's about a centimetre shorter on the top. Moving to the back, I think they're pretty much identical really on the back. The back looks nicer on the Switch Lite because obviously you haven't got the contrasting Joy-Cons on there, or the kickstand, which looks a bit ugly. And I also like that the Switch logo is in white on this blue model as opposed to like a grey kind of colour on the original Switch. I'm not sure if it was white when I got it or if it's always been like that. You've still got quite a lot of cooling at the bottom here. The vents there, they're bigger on the original Switch. Yeah, I guess if you're in docked mode, you need more cooling, maybe. I'm assuming that's why that is. Moving on up then, up to the top, you can see we've got the game cartridge thing, port even. They're in pretty much the identical position on both systems. You've got the fans, or the what is it, heatsink kind of fan system going on. That gets pretty intense on the original Switch. It'd be interesting to see if it's still the same on the Switch Lite, because you're never going to stick it in docked mode, so it won't have to spin up that much. But yeah, I mean, they look the same. Looks a little bit more refined on the Switch Lite. It's a nicer little grille they've got going there. And then you move across. Got the volume rocker once again. I think it's exactly the same, to be honest. Oh, it's a little bit more recessed on the original Switch, so it sticks out a bit more on the newer one, on the Switch Lite, which I'm a fan of. Power button is actually smaller on the Switch Lite than it is on the original Switch. Not an issue, really. I'm not a fan of the power button on the original Switch either, so, you know, it's kind of still a bit pants in that kind of aspect. But that's obviously not really an issue, as I said in the unboxing. Moving on to the shoulder buttons, exactly the same, I think. Apart from how they feel, which I'll get to in a minute. Maybe this is a little bit bigger. It looks like it kind of has a different shape to it on the Switch Lite, which is cool. I've not really had an issue with these buttons, but I am more of a fan of the Switch Lite ones. And then obviously round onto the front. Sorry, let me just juggle these a little bit. They're pretty much the same. Obviously, the only difference is the D-pad and, in the grand scheme of things, the location of the buttons, because the controllers are, or the actual system is smaller, so they're going to have to be lower down. So yeah, as you can see here, it gives you a better look of the button comparison. They are a little bit lower on the Switch Lite, which is going to, as I said, take some getting used to, but it's by no means necessarily a game changer. Like, I mean, if you haven't got a Pro controller anyway, I'd highly recommend getting one. But yeah, other than that, you've got our Switch Lite. Bezels are a little bit smaller around the screen on the Switch Lite, but it does have, like, I don't know if you can make it out on camera. There is, yeah, you can just about see it. There is a black bar, if I turn it on. We'll do that later. There is like a black bar around the screen, which is, I don't know, it's not really an issue, but on the Switch, you don't have that. It goes straight to the edge of the borders. So yeah, moving on to buttons now, as I set the day and time, I believe it's the 20th. I could be completely wrong, and I'm very sorry if it's not the 20th. What is it, the 9th, 8th? Yeah, we'll just leave it like that. We'll set it up later. But yeah, the buttons feel, it's hard to describe, you know, because the buttons on Nintendo systems, in my opinion, have always been a little bit different, and I don't want to say bad or worse than like Xbox and PlayStation, because all the buttons feel different. If you're somebody who's played with all controllers, you'll know how different the controllers feel just because of the buttons. We'll just create a new user quickly. We'll go for Fox. Why not? Or is that Wolf? I don't know. We'll just go for George. But yeah, they do feel quite different on Nintendo systems. And on the Switch Lite, they feel quite different to the original Switch, interestingly enough. They've got more travel to them. If you don't know what travel is, it's sort of like how far you can press the button before it like bottoms out. So if you think of like this as a button, then we might be able to show it quite well with this. So you can push it and it clicks. The click is it bottoming out, reaching the bottom of its kind of point. Oh, the home button feels a little stiffer than before. So yeah, bottoming out is when it reaches like its lowest travel distance. And then on these, you can really push them in, if you can see that. Like they pretty much disappear into the frame of the console, which is nice in my opinion. It feels more like you're pressing something. Then if you move over to the original Switch, they're a little bit more low profile, but they don't go anywhere. Like it's hard to show you, but the travel distance on the buttons, there you go, got it in focus. It's not much, you know. There's more of a click there. I'll see if you can hear this. I'm not exactly sure where the microphone is, but I'll try and make it so you can hear the button difference. So this is the original Switch. And then moving on to the Switch Lite, it's definitely a lot more travel there. It almost feels like the Switch, well, obviously the switches for the buttons are different, but it almost feels like these are more rubber domed kind of switches. If you know mechanical keyboards, these are more rubber domed switches, and these are more, I don't want to say mechanical, but it just feels like there's less space in the Joy-Cons for which makes sense. Like either side of the screen here, they can have like stuff for the main body of the console, like the processing power or whatever, whereas these have to be detachable. So these are full of technology, especially with the IR sensors and stuff like that. So it feels like these are a little bit more full, and you can't then therefore push the buttons in as far as you can on the other one, where it feels like there's maybe a little bit more space. So yeah, these buttons ZR and ZL once again feel like there's no movement there. There's like very little movement. You might be able to see that quite well actually. There's very little movement there in the buttons, whereas on the new one there's quite a lot of movement. It's interesting. I'm not sure whether I actually think about it. I think I do prefer having more travel. It feels better. Like you know you're pressing the button and you know you're like pushing hard enough and stuff, if you know what I mean. But yeah, if ultimately they are pretty similar, but they do have their differences. Weight-wise, the original Switch is obviously heavier. There's more tech in there and it's bigger. But this Switch Lite, I'm impressed. I'm very impressed with how it feels in the hand and how it like handles in general. Like I'm going to enjoy playing on this, I think, and I'm going to do that as soon as I finish this video. I'm going to get straight on Link's Awakening, even Link's Adventure. Gonna get on that. I've just done my first play. I'm gonna see if I can I think you can transfer saves. I could be wrong. If not, no worries. I'll play through it again on here. So yeah, my name has been George. This has been the Switch Lite. You can get yours down in the description below. If you want to read more about my comparison and my initial thoughts on the systems, you can check out the link in the video description as well to the ShopTo blog. I'll have an article up on there hopefully later today, taking a look at those. So yeah, my name has been George, as I said. This has been ShopTo. You can check out the Switch Lite down in the description. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.